They come from the distant salt mines of Bilma. For a month now, they have been traveling with over 600 dromedaries which transport the valuable load of salt. And ahead of them still lie 40 days of tortuous journeying before they reach the markets of northern Nigeria. They are the salt caravans of the Tuareg, the Blue Men, the people forsaken by God, as the Arabs called these nomads, who inhabit the desolate immensity of the Sahara Desert. For they were ferocious warriors dedicated to pillage, to assaulting traders and travelers, to sacking the farmers' villages. They were the lords of the desert. No one in his right mind dared enter their domains, where there was no other law but that which they imposed. These caravan drivers have to cross the Tenere, the desert within the desert, the devil's furnace where the powerful rays of the sun kill off any sign of life, and where the Sirocco, the torrid Saharan wind, erases any trace of a track. The timid presence of thorny bushes, true geniuses of survival, announces their arrival at the Sahel. The torment is now over. Now they'll be able to travel by day, following the trails marked year after year over centuries by other caravans. Long before Westerners traveled into space and knew about orbits and constellations, the Tuareg covered thousands of miles on their nighttime journeys across the inferno of the Tenere, guided only by the stars. The Madugu, as the caravan chiefs are called, know the extensive map of the Saharan sky like the backs of their hands. Knowledge which has been handed down from generation to generation and which enables them to find their way in the frozen desert nights and lead their dromedaries across the immense seas of sand. Water is the most precious treasure of all. It is the difference between life and death. But it is not easy to obtain. They must dig deep wells and water the cattle every day in a seemingly endless task. From sunrise, the herders start to arrive at the wells with their cattle from the pasture areas. With the help of the asses, they draw water in rubber or hide skins, which can contain up to 50 liters. First, the dromedaries drink, then the cows, and finally the sheep and goats. Each clan has its own wells for which they charge a fee from other tribes, such as their Peuls who live in the same region. But the traditional Tuareg law does not allow them to charge anything for allowing people to drink. In fact, denying a thirsty person water has always been punished by death. Not all the wells are large and permanent. The majority are small and temporary, giving just enough water for small herds of goats. There are areas where wells are dug every year. In the wet season, the rains are torrential. The wells get clogged up with mud and become unusable. When the rains end, each family has to again dig new wells. But the work is done by specialists. It is very dangerous. Sometimes the narrow shafts they dig can be up to 30 or even 40 meters deep, and any fault in the wall can cause it to cave in. Every year there are mortal victims among the caste of well diggers, who along with the blacksmiths occupy an important place in the Tuareg society. Without the well diggers, the cattle would die of thirst, and without the blacksmiths, they would have no weapons with which to defend themselves. Still today, the Tuareg go around armed with their takubas, the double-edged swords which they handle with skill, and with their daggers, which they hide beneath their tunics. Salt is also extremely important. In this area of the Sahel, the pasture is very poor and their cattle need extra rations of salt. Hence the importance of the caravans which transport the great loaves of salt from thousands of miles away. From December to January, the landscape of the Sahel takes on a ghostly appearance as a result of the Hamatan, a cold wind from the north, which carries large quantities of dust in suspension. At this time of year, the nights are very cold, with temperatures dropping below zero. Tuareg are superb riders. On the banks of their Miari dromedaries, they can travel enormous distances at a gallop. Not long ago, the Tuareg hordes ruled over these lands. Their ability to move rapidly and their adaptation to the hostile conditions of the desert made them an invincible army. The Tuareg Confederation dominated trade and all the routes and became the lords of the desert and the savannah. The Tuareg society maintains a rigid hierarchy composed of nobles, the clergy, the warriors, the different castes of artisans, free men and slaves, of which some still remain, though in smaller numbers than in the past. Today we have arrived in the lands of Sultan Hansata, a traditional Tuareg chief. Every so often he sets up his enormous tent and listens to the requests and needs of his subjects. Several days ago, the nomad families who will attend the reception began to arrive. They carry their homes with them, also traveling with all their belongings, including their herds. The Tuareg tents are very simple, if we compare them with other nomad dwellings such as the Mongol Gers. They do not need protection from very low temperatures or from the rain or ice, but yes, from the wind, the sand, and the implacable rays of the sun. Each tent is composed of a framework of thick acacia branches and a covering made of goat or camel skin sewn together. Depending on the size, from 30 to 200 skins are needed. They have very few belongings, as is usual among nomadic peoples. A portable bed consisting of 2 wooden supports on which struts are placed to serve as a base, and a mat, which serves as a mattress. Beside the bed, the food store is placed, a gourd which is kept at a height to protect the contents from insects. The Tuareg women, unlike other Muslim women, do not hide their faces. It is the man that does so with a veil. They also have rights and can freely express their opinions. They are treated with great respect. They're in charge of the household tasks, while the man takes care of the cattle and, when necessary, goes to war. These days they have shared out the cooking and have prepared a great deal of food for the Sultan's reception. Each family is responsible for one thing, such as making butter and cheese, one of their main foods. Others are in charge of dyeing the turbans with indigo, the dark blue color with a coppery sheen which is characteristic of the Tuareg. This is where the name the Blue Men comes from. The veil that covers their faces gradually dyes their beards, cheeks and hands. When the first travelers who survived an encounter with the Tuareg wrote their chronicles, they referred to them as the Blue Men. Apart from dairy products, their favorite dish is lamb, especially at celebrations. They cook it with rice or millet and is considered a great delicacy. Finally, Sultan Hansata arrives at his enormous tent where his court of noblemen have long been waiting for him. The main subject of the audiences is almost always the same: disputes which arise over the use of water and the construction of new wells. But as recently as 2 years ago, what was resolved here were the problems of an armed conflict. Part of the Tuareg nation was at war due to the problems of borders and autonomies, a concern almost as old as water. The borders marked on maps by the former colonial powers artificially divided the Tuaregs and created barriers in the desert, which, without a doubt, belonged to them. The caravans were detained and their chiefs executed. Then, almost a century ago, the lords of the Sahara took up arms. Until now, there has been no real lasting peace. Before the audience is open to the subjects, the riders of the court, mounted on their dromedaries, dance the ilugan in honor of the Sultan. The women sound the dende and sing songs that speak of the courage of the Tuareg warriors and their great feats of war, while the riders display their skill with the animals. They are songs of complicated rhymes and subtle rhythms, which change following the movement of the warriors mounted on their miares, the fastest dromedaries in the world. They have nervous, rebellious characters, but once broken in with the technique and knowledge of these expert riders, they are able to form exercises that no other camel in the world would be able to do. It is a display the men put on for the women's benefit to demonstrate their bravery and skill. Those that best control the animal and perform the most complicated or dangerous movements enjoy the admiration of the women who fix their eyes only on them in an ancestral language of codes of love. Finally, the riders pay tribute to the beauty of the women, making their dromedaries kneel down before them, a tradition which clearly demonstrates the respect in which women are held in this monogamous society, despite having converted to Islam. Once the dance is over, the riders go back inside the Sultan's tent in order that the audience may begin. We had to continue on our nomadic journey. We had to leave for the Air Massif in northern Niger to join another Tuareg group, the Kelewei. Before leaving, we thanked Sultan Hanaseta for the hospitality with which he had received us. Many Tuaregs have adopted a sedentary lifestyle, especially the so-called Black Tuaregs or Velas, descendants of the enslaved class, which gradually mixed with their Tuareg masters. They engage in agriculture, though not forgetting cattle herding. They have absorbed the influences of many sedentary peoples who live alongside them in the same region, especially the Hausa and the Yerma. Their enormous grain stores in which they keep millet are clear evidence of an agricultural people who have been settled for centuries and have developed advanced techniques for storing the grain. After a torturous journey along the Saharan tracks, we come to Agadez, the Tuareg capital of the Niger region of Air. Its mosque, built in 1515, is a jewel of Muslim religious architecture. The minaret, of pyramidal form, measures some 30 meters in height. It is a city of clay, of narrow labyrinthine streets. Due to its geographical location, it is an important point on the historical trade routes, an obligatory stop-off between the oases of the north and east on the way to Sudan. It is home to a complex mix of peoples and tribes. The first description of Agadez, which in Tamayek, the Tuareg language, means meeting, comes from Leon the African in 1512. He tells us that in the city there lived foreign traders of all races who had a great number of slaves who escorted and guarded them along the route to Kano, which was infested with bandits. The Air Massif to the north of Agadez covers an area similar in size to Switzerland. Its mountains are of volcanic origin. The average elevation is 700 meters, though its highest summit, Bagsane, reaches a height of 2,022 meters. Through its valleys run small seasonal rivers which feed a vegetation of acacias and bushes. It is in these valleys that we find the camps of the Kilauea Tuaregs. Their huts are not of goatskin but of matting. The Kilauea are considered the best Tuareg caravan drivers. This commercial traffic is the basis of their economy. From the Air Mountains, they travel along two main routes, the Taferde to the west, which crosses the Tenere to Bilma in the Kanuri country, and the Airan to the south, which crosses the Hausa country and leads to Kano in Nigeria. Each caravan driver takes almost a month to get ready for the journey. They must weave ropes, obtain food provisions, prepare their merchandise for barter, and collect fodder for the dromedaries. Then they join the other caravan drivers to travel together, forming enormous caravans. They say that in 1988, a caravan arrived in Bilma with over 5,000 dromedaries. Kelaren Mustaf has prepared a celebration in order to name his son. After slitting the throat of a goat, he signals to the sky and repeats the name of his son 3 times. The women answer with a sakrit from inside his wife's tent. With a goatskin, they cover a mortar in order to prepare the tende, the Tuareg instrument of percussion. They weave a rope of matting with which they firmly attach the skin, which has previously been wetted. Then they tie the ends to another rope which will serve to pull the skin taut. Two large sticks are threaded through the ropes to apply pressure and tune the drumhead. Meanwhile, one of Kelaren's brothers skins the sacrificed goat before it gets cold. The Tuareg are expert tanners. To complete the tende, they place large stones on these sticks to apply pressure and make the skin as taut as possible. The Air Massif is home to some 4,000 Tuareg. The wind is the great sculptor of the landscape. The sand it carries slowly, constantly erodes the rocky mountains, which are of a marked sub-desert nature, only interrupted by small valleys and narrow canyons, where vegetation is possible. The Tuareg camps are scattered throughout the region. Their fragile huts of matting are not portable, unlike the usual homes of nomadic peoples. They are so easy to build that when they move, they leave them and build others when they arrive at their new location. Sometimes, as the routes they follow in their annual migration are almost always the same, they make use of these structures abandoned the year before. The women are in charge of weaving the mats. They make strips which are joined together to form the mats. The women are the repositories of the age-old Tuareg culture. Through poems and songs, they educate their children and teach them the Tamayek language. They dedicate a great deal of time to their personal appearance. The wife of a Targi, the singler of Tuareg, has the obligation to look her best for her husband. She must do her hair every day and adorn herself with silver jewelry. When her husband returns at dusk, he will find his wife dressed in her finest clothes. Not in vain, the Tuareg have always had the reputation of having the most beautiful, sweet-natured women in West Africa. The tents are composed of a series of wooden arches on which the mats, generally oval in shape, are tied. In Kelaren Mustaf's village, the celebration has begun. Kelaren and his brother dance to the song sung by the women, accompanied by the percussion rhythm of the tende and the gourd. The traditional chiefs sitting on a mat have come to the village to take part in the celebration because Kelaren is a member of an ancient noble lineage. They can memorize their family tree back to the time when the Tuareg conquered the mythical city of Timbuktu, or when their warrior ancestors exterminated the French expeditionary force led by Colonel Flatters in 1881. The Kelaway of the Air Mountains were among the last Tuareg groups to convert to Islam, and still today, though they are Muslim, they continue to believe in their ancient animist pantheon. Under cover of night, the strident rhythm of the maracas and gourds beseeches the presence of the spirits. Once again, the eternal Africa reawakens from the depths of time. The Ikadammatan Tuaregs, famed sorcerers and diviners, practice their arts to obtain the blessing of the spirits and trade in the benefits of their magic remedies. Their religious beliefs are strongly influenced by the magic practices of their neighbors, the Hausa, with whom they often share the nocturnal spiritual rituals. The constant rhythm, the cries, and the convulsive movements of the dance cause the participants to go into a trance. The invoked spirits manifest themselves through the medium. They express their will, recommend medicinal recipes, and demand sacrifices of animals in payment for their services. Once again, the sorcerers dance and pray to their gods in the dark of night. This land would not be Africa if the mystery of myth were not constantly renewed, if the tom-tom fell silent forever, or if the Africans stopped asking themselves who placed the stars in the distant firmament. Perhaps the most fascinating and enigmatic people of West Africa are the Fulani, also known as Peols, Hulo or Fulbe. They are the Oxmen, nomads who travel around the entire Sahel region in search of pasture for their cattle. Their origin is uncertain. Some authors believe they came from Egypt, others from the Sudanese plateau. The fact is, physically, they are very different from all the other ethnic groups of this region. They live in what might be called the country of the baobabs, without a doubt the most emblematic tree of the Sahel, immortalized by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry in his unforgettable tale, The Little Prince. According to legend, at the beginning of time, the baobab was like all other trees on the earth. But the Supreme Being, seeing it was so beautiful, wanted to favor it, and so allowed it to grow and grow. After some time, it was the largest tree in the world. One day, the enormous baobab, intoxicated with vanity, spoke to God, telling him that it would soon become greater even than him. Then the Creator realized his mistake and punished it for its arrogance by turning it upside down. That is why the branches of the baobab look like its roots. Every day, the market is held in a different village. It is the best occasion to observe the mosaic of races that share this region. Fulanas with their popos of yellow tones, Tuaregs, Yermas, or Gumanches with their faces decorated with extravagant designs. The Fulani women are easily recognizable from the amount of jewelry and beads they wear, and from the ritual tattoos etched into their faces. After several weeks of transhumance, an entire clan returns with its numerous head of cattle to one of their usual settlements. Nowadays, many Fulani are semi-sedentary. The women arrive dressed in all their finery. Their faces are decorated with old silver coins, their most valuable jewelry. On their heads they carry the greatest symbol of wealth a Fulani woman can display, the ornamental goods from their homes. When they move in search of new pasture for the oxen, the Fulani use a portable house of intertwined straw and reeds. Inside, the gourds and ceramic amphorae, decorated with clan designs, preside over the small space. The circular roof is composed of a structure of thick acacia branches and straw, attached to the reed walls. Finally, the simple furniture is completed by a bed raised above the ground on an earthen platform, on which they place their mats. The structure of their permanent houses is the same as the portable ones, but the walls are of adobe bricks. The interior layout is also the same, but with a little more space. The young Fulani women sing to welcome the travelers. Their faces are marked with deep incisions. They are the scars of the initiation rite, marks of identity they will conserve all their lives. In the past, they served to distinguish those of the same clan if they were caught by slave traders. At dusk, the dances begin, but they are now danced by the Fulani slaves. They are the descendants of castes considered inferior, which still today are subject to the will of the Fulani noble class. It is a much less brutal form of slavery than that of the terrible age of slave trading and of the slave kingdoms which still survive in many parts of West Africa. The rhythm of the drums, broken from time to time by the drum roll of the main percussionists, seems to electrify the atmosphere while the feline bodies of the youngest women perform sinuous movements. The exciting African sexuality grabs the attention of the spectators, and for a few moments the slave women rule the spirits of the nobles. Among all the Fulani or Peul peoples, who in total number some 6 million, without a doubt the most peculiar are the Bororo, with their astonishing cult of beauty. There are around 45,000 of them, and they live between northern Nigeria and southern Niger. This is the Fulani group which has preserved its customs most intact. They are still nomads because they do not understand any other way of life. From different distant places, the Bororo families of various lineages arrive at the Warso celebration. Every year they meet here when the rains end. Over several days, each group will set up at the place they traditionally occupy. The women are in charge of putting up the tents while the men tend to the cattle which always travel with them. The Bororo are also called the Wudabe, which literally means the people of the taboo. And this is due to the fact that they live their lives strictly observing the traditional laws, marked by numerous prohibitions and magical beliefs. Though nothing certain is known of their origins, as is the case with the rest of the Fulani subgroups, legend traces them back to two ancestral brothers, Ali and Dejerijo. From them descended the first 15 clans who subsequently subdivided. They have a code of behavior essentially based on 4 ethical principles: Sentende, reserve and modesty; Munjal, patience and fortitude; Hakilo, attention and reflection; and Bodal, the criteria of physical beauty. While the men measure their wealth by the head of cattle they own, the women do so by the number of goods. They will acquire these throughout their lives, and only a few will be used as household utensils, the rest being passed down from mothers to daughters. The goods are only displayed on special occasions and at least once a year at this celebration of the Warsaw. The Bororo women are easily recognizable by the tattoos on their faces, their hairstyles in the form of pom-poms with 2 plaids at each side of the head, which have a magic meaning of protection, and their jewelry, especially the large rings they wear in their ears. They do not consider themselves to be of black race, but rather red. The tents or surus are similar to those of the Tuareg, as are the beds in which they sleep. Each man can have as many wives as he can maintain, but the women can only have 1 husband. The boys begin instruction in the secrets and prohibitions of the group when they reach 4 years old. Sometime between the ages of 8 and 12 they are circumcised, and from then on they may participate in the dances along with their brothers. When the girls are 2 or 3 years old, their earlobes are pierced so they can wear the rings. At a single time, 6 holes are made in the right ear and 7 in the left one. From the age of 8, they will begin their instruction as adults. The Bororo do not practice ablation of the clitoris. Their diet, like that of the other nomads of the Sahel, is based on the dairy products they obtain from zebu milk. Rice and millet, which they get by means of barter with the Hausa or Yerma agricultural tribes, are also very important foodstuffs. In the dry season, the majority of families do not put up their tents. They mark out a space with a fence of hawthorn branches and trellises of matting. This type of dwelling they call a nest. Beside this dwelling, on a table, they place the ornamental goods. They have specific names depending on their size. They are decorated with geometric designs: triangles, lines, half-moons, suns. These designs, at times very elaborated, are passed down from generation to generation. In reality, they are protective talismans. Periodically, the women decorate and protect their goods with paintings of red and white clay. Before the Warsaw celebration begins, the women tease the men with jokes and taunts referring to their physical appearance and the way they dance. Shortly afterwards, the men start to get ready for the dance. They paint their faces with ochre or red kaolin, apply black coal around the eyes and mouth, and draw a yellow line from the forehead to the chin. From when they are young, the boys are instructed in the cult of beauty. As soon as they are born, the mothers massage the head of their babies so it acquires a rounded shape. When their hair grows, it is woven into the traditional plaits, which is the way they will wear it for the rest of their lives. When they have finished putting on their makeup and the turbans and ostrich feathers, the dances can begin. It is one of the most astonishing spectacles in Africa. The members of the different lineages stand in line and compete against each other in beauty as the women watch on. As the dance progresses, their gestures become more and more exaggerated. They roll their eyes, puff out their cheeks, bare their teeth, wrinkle their noses, and look as cross-eyed as they can. The Bororo concepts of beauty are essentially based on having a rounded head, light skin, very white whites of the eyes, and perfect white teeth. A dancer knows he has attracted the attention of the women when an old woman approaches him, pointing at him and shouting, "Yehu!" It is one of the few opportunities they have for finding a partner outside the circle of cousins. Usually marriages are arranged from the time they are children within the same lineage. A few days later, the Yerol is performed, a longer dance in which attractions and preferences demonstrated at the start of the Warsaw may be converted into real matrimonial agreements. The participants are dressed in a different manner. The makeup on their faces is now red, and on their naked torsos hang their amulets, the magani, which give them beauty. With the Yerol dance, the Warsaw comes to an end. One more year, the tradition has been continued. Now the families will leave for the different places where they will spend the dry season. Next year, they will return and will again dress up to display the beauty and the dignity of a people who have renounced the influences of the dominant Western culture. For their women, these men will continue to be beautiful, just as their ancestors were from the beginning of time.